This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Happy Monday. Lindsey Graham is saying, the Republican Party maybe should return Steve Wynn's money. I think that there's a larger story here. Okay, just to put this in context and bring you up to date on what's going on. The Koch brothers have announced that they are going to spend $400 billion to rig they wouldn't use the word rig, to win for Republicans in the election that's happening this year. Now, we have 50 states in the United States. $400 billion is $8 billion per state? No, let's see, 5 goes into 40. I can't even do the math. 8 times, yeah. Yeah, it seems like. Anyway, so $400 billion. If you had $100 billion, that would be $2 billion per state. Yeah, that's $8 billion a state. So they're going to spend, obviously it won't be $8 billion in each state, which is even worse for probably New York and California, who knows. But can you imagine if any liberal billionaire was to say, if I've been saying billions, I meant millions. If any billionaire was to say, yeah, I'm going to spend $8 million in your state. I've been saying billions, excuse me. It's millions. So it's still a mind-boggling amount of money. It's just a mind-boggling amount of money. So Steve Wynn, just back up a little bit. Harvey Wasserman was like this, Democratic donor, major Democratic donor, a left-wing billionaire, if you will, and was accused of sexual assault. And so Democrats all said, that's it, give back the money or give it to charity or whatever. At the encouragement of the Republicans, you'll recall. I mean, it was like, right after the election that, as soon as this came out, in fact, here's the RNC has been noticeably silent on what they will do with the money raised by Wynn, despite quickly calling on the DNC to return contributions from Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. I said Wasserman, Weinstein. It's been a busy morning. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and several Democratic lawmakers, including Senator Chuck Schumer of New York and Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, returned or donated Weinstein's contributions shortly after news broke of the allegations. But the Republican counterparts have not made any such announcements about Wynn's contributions. So here we have, this from CNBC.com. Koch brothers network to spend up to $400 million for the midterm election cycle, including $20 million to sell the GOP tax law. So let me ask the question. If both parties agree, or at least Lindsey Graham from the Republican Party agrees, that taking money from billionaires who assault women is not a good thing, and so they're giving the money back. What about taking money from billionaires who are assaulting the environment? What about taking money from billionaires who are funding groups that deny climate change? We have droughts all around the world right now as the result of climate change that drove revolutions, that drove the Arab Spring. The war in Syria is in large part was caused by, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, as the desert moved south, about 1 million people, subsistence farmers in northern Syria, lost their farms to the desert and moved into the major Syrian cities, producing an explosion of homelessness, causing the social safety net in that country to creak and groan, and people to go out in the streets and protest, which Assad responded to by shooting people. Boom, revolution. From climate change, from burning fossil fuels. We had, Puerto Rico get taken out. New Orleans get taken out. Hurricane Sandy, New Jersey, taken out by hurricanes that were made worse by global warming. There's no dispute about this any longer, or at least no consequential dispute. Even in meteorological circles, the extraordinary cold that is gripping the United States periodically. When we were living full time in Washington D.C., it was just a few weeks ago. It was absolutely bizarre, the cold in Washington D.C. Why is this? Because as the Arctic warms and loses its ice cover, and it's doing both, it's warming several times faster than the rest of the planet. As the Arctic warms, the ability to maintain the jet stream is falling apart, and so the jet stream is getting all loopy and drooly. And as a result, Arctic air is literally drooling down over North America and other parts of the world. And as that happens, of course, it speeds up the warming there. So the guys who, revolution, even earthquakes. I mean, as Greenland is getting lighter, as millions of gallons of water every second are flushing away because they're melting off, and they're getting little micro earthquakes and stuff around Greenland. So droughts, fires, California, wildfires. Right now, California, Southern Oregon, insanely dry. Freezes, floods, hurricanes, revolutions in the Middle East and around the world. It's happening in Bangladesh. It's happening in India. It's happening all over. So shouldn't we collectively in the United States say, it's terrible that Weinstein and Wynn has been accused. Well, both of them have denied the accusations, but it's terrible if they assaulted women that they did, and their money. We don't want their money. Isn't it time to say it is at least equally terrible that these guys are assaulting all life on Earth, women and men, and children, and everything, by funding climate change denying, and by funding a Republican Party that denies climate change, so that the profits of Koch Industries and ExxonMobil, who is also doing this, and I don't know what kind of donations they're making, but to say this money is just as toxic as Harvey Weinstein or Steve Wynn's money. Period. Full stop. Don't take that $400 million, Republicans. Don't take it. And how about the $800 or $900 million from 2 years ago? How about giving that back? Do we really want climate change deniers buying our politicians, funding our politicians to the point that the politicians will lie about science in order to help their donor class? And now the Kochs are also, obviously, they've made these, the two of the richest guys in the world, made all this money, largely with fossil fuels. They've diversified tremendously since Daddy, let them inherit the oil company. But now they're going to spend $20 million to convince us all that the tax breaks that the billionaires got are good for you and me, too. Coming to a TV screen near you soon. This concerns me. How is it that we get so worked up and so moral, appropriately so, about the assault of women, but we're not apparently concerned about, or at least our news media is not concerned about, and our political parties don't seem to be all that explicitly concerned about, certainly the Republican Party not at all, about the assault of our world. The assault on our planet that is being perpetrated and propagated by fossil fuel billionaires and fossil fuel companies. Isn't it time to say no to fossil fuel money right across the board? And have the midterms been bought? Is this $400 million statement from the Koch brothers, $8 million per state? This is a lot of money. Does this mean that forget about the blue wave? What do you think? We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And in just a minute, is it appropriate to lock up women who are drinking when they're pregnant? Stick around. And welcome back. So have the midterms already been bought? It seems to me like that's pretty much what's going on. And it ain't a good thing. And here we have Senator Lindsey Graham saying, yeah, we should do of ourselves what we ask of the Democratic Party if these allegations have merit. Oh, if these allegations have merit. So let's wait a year and find out? I don't know. Walt in Rapid City, South Dakota. Hey, Walt, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Yeah, I want to talk about, it seems to me that we've really had a class warfare going on for probably 40 years. And it seems like the rich guys are just unleashing a weather weapon on the rest of us. I don't know. I
don't think that was their intent. I really don't. A lot of these guys are invested heavily in the insurance industry, which is taking a huge hit from it. I think that although, the reality apparently is from news reports that ExxonMobil knew about this back in the 70s.
Well, that's one thing I'm basing my theory on, I'm real nervous. But,
I think they just said we'd rather have the money, screw the planet.
Well, yeah.
Now, whether Koch Industries knew what ExxonMobil knew is an open question, but nobody can deny right now that they know it.
Yeah, well, I really think they all knew it, and that's the reason they're denying it. And
I think that may well be the case, and it's the reason why ExxonMobil for years and years was funding climate denial when they knew that they were funding a lie, and yet we're still using petrodollars, petrobillionaires' money. I mean, it's astonishing. It's really astonishing. Well, thanks for the call.
Right.
Good point. And thanks for watching Free Speech. Alex in Edison, New Jersey. Hey, Alex, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. Or good afternoon. I'd like to disagree with you about something you said. Maybe you know more about the topic than I do, so if I get educated, all the better. You said that in terms of carbon emission, or to paraphrase you, that electric cars are better for the environment. And I kind of disagree with that. I think, well, for one, you need energy to make the cars run. It doesn't matter if that energy is coming from the internal combustion at the engine or like in the coal plant.
No, but if that energy is coming from solar power or wind power, it does matter. It matters a lot.
Yes,
or from hydropower like we have here in Portland.
Well, if you look at the whole United States fleet, 80% of the energy we produce is from fossil fuels. Now, so if you want a good energy policy, it's not how you consume the energy. I think it's how you produce it.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. If you want to make an argument against electric cars, probably the best place to go is rare earth minerals. But I see this whole process as being a transitional one. But anyhow, Alex, we're running out of time. Thank you for the call. We'll continue the conversation. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Okay, so topic one, should we declare as a nation that fossil fuel money is just as corrupt, the money coming from climate change deniers in the fossil fuel industry is just as corrupt and tainted and poisonous and destructive to our republic, to the United States, as is money from people who have a long history of sexual assault or, assault, I guess is the word. And it seems to me like, at the very least, we should be drawing that equivalence. So I'll be picking up your thoughts on that. And then I wanted to also raise this is fascinating. A prosecutor in Montana is actually putting out the word to the police department and to the people of Montana. He's the prosecutor in Bighorn County in Montana. He has announced a, quote, immediate crackdown on any expectant mothers who use drugs or drink alcohol. This is by Catherine Pearson over at Huffington Post. Harris encouraged the public to report instances of mothers to be drinking or using drugs to the sheriff. Now, this, I get it. The rate at which Montana babies were born exposed to narcotics increased tenfold from 2000 to 2013, from fewer than 0.8%, fewer than 1 per 1,000 live births to 9 per 1,000 live births. That's about a tenfold increase. That's what's that? 1,000% increase. It's still a small number, but it's not a good thing. And nationwide, the incidence of newborn withdrawal increased 300% between 2000 and 2013. But, writes Catherine Pearson, research and experience show that treating pregnant women punitively can do more harm than good. An already vulnerable population of women, she writes, may be discouraged from seeking prenatal care or help stopping their drug use. An abrupt discontinuation of opioids during pregnancy, as would happen when an expectant mother is jailed, can lead to preterm labor, fetal distress, and even fetal death. And she compares this to a handmaiden's tale. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and numerous other major medical groups condemned Bighorn County's proposed crackdown. They said it would be ineffective and harmful. Lauren Jansen says there really is zero scientific evidence that this will work. She's the director of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center for Addiction and Pregnancy. She said anytime you try and separate the well-being of the fetus from the well-being of the mother, you get into a kind of slippery slope. The fetus relies on stable maternal physiology to develop properly, and if you put a woman with an addiction disorder under constant stress, if you put them in jail, if you deny them treatment, if you deny them medication, that's not going to be optimal for the fetus. So, it seems like on its surface, this is more of the idea that women are just baskets to carry men's babies. We're back to, the pre-Van Leeuwenhoek theory that sperm was the homunculus, prior to about 300 years ago, maybe 400 years ago, I'm not sure when Van Leeuwenhoek, the whole microscope thing, prior to the microscope, the belief was that sperm was little tiny fully formed humans that got deposited into women's bread baskets where they cooked for 9 months and popped out, fully formed human. And in fact, there were efforts back, literally 500 years ago and longer, to try inserting that sperm in other animals to see if they could be used as well as women, try cows. Didn't work out all that well. They couldn't figure out why. Why is it? I don't even want that picture in my mind. But anyway, you get my point. And this is this whole idea that a male-dominated patriarchal hierarchical society for thousands of years, for the 9,000 years of modern Western civilization, what we call Western civilization, has been totally male-dominated. And the idea, it's only in the last couple hundred years that we even knew that women were contributing to the process, that half of a baby is their DNA. And so, this whole idea had been used to perpetuate this notion that, women are just little, toaster ovens. And this is extraordinarily destructive. So what I would say is, fine. We want to stop women from using drugs and alcohol during pregnancy. I'm totally down with that. When we ran the Salem Children's Village, we had numerous children come through with fetal alcohol syndrome. I have seen it. I've seen it repeatedly. It's a horrible thing. You do not want children born with fetal alcohol syndrome. But instead of criminalizing the women, we should be supporting them. Why don't we, at the very least, you would think that these so-called pro-life Republicans would say, okay, if a woman becomes pregnant, she instantly qualifies for Medicaid. Instantly. Instantly qualifies for food stamps if she's, below the poverty level, if she can't work or shouldn't work because of her pregnancy. We're going to support her. Instantly qualifies for some kind of housing support. Put into place the systems that will cause her not to feel that she has to turn to drugs or alcohol to deal with the crisis of life in America post-Reaganomics. Anyhow, that's my rant. I'll pick up your phone calls on these topics and others right after the break. Stick around. It is coming up on 9 minutes.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of your calls, my thoughts, and the news of the day right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Neil McCabe has announced, or apparently, I'm not sure if he announced it or leaked it, NBC is reporting that Neil McCabe is going to be stepping down as the number 2 guy in the FBI, or at the Justice Department. And we'll see where this goes. The news is developing, and I'll fill you in more as time goes on, but that seems to be the strat. The big question, of course, is going to be who replaces him. All right, this is, he's the deputy director of the FBI, excuse me. And, he was acting director of the Bureau for a while. He's already expected to leave, though not this soon. And CNBC says the story is developing. Please check back for updates. So we will do that. I hadn't seen it on the top of the New York Times or the Washington Post yet, but I caught the chyron on NBC. Anyhow, Susan in Chicago Heights, Illinois. Hey, Susan, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I love your show, by the way. I love that you talk about the environment and without all the silliness and everything. Anyway, what I want to bring up is something that came out in the news late last week. Not the major news yet. We'll see today if it's on later. But apparently the administration is going to get rid of all the clean air, EPA clean air regulations. There's no reason for that except he's giving tax break, money, all the money that's going to come into his rich fossil fuel CEO buddies. They're going to trash the planet and run with the money.
Right. And they're transferring $400 million of that money to politicians and to support Republicans in the election that's coming up this year. So, it's not a good thing, Susan. It's definitely not a good thing. And so do you think that we should be collectively treating fossil fuel money as toxic, as being as toxic as money that comes from people who are accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault?
Absolutely, even more so, because all of us need clean air, even Republicans. They need clean air and they need clean water. This is just insane. Yeah,
you would think that Republicans would figure that out, but I think right now the money and power thing has got them all confused. Susan, well said. Thank you for the call. Mark in Las Vegas. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hi, yes. Hold on one second. I want to take it off of speakerphone.
Sure.
You still there?
I am.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get to it. Can you hear me okay?
I'm not going to wait that long. I'm sorry. John in McKees Rock, Pennsylvania. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Tom. You think about all the topics you covered through the years you've been doing this.
Yeah, John, by the way, thank you for being there and not being on speakerphone when you first came on. For people who are listening, if I sounded brusque just a moment ago, Arthur, our call screener, always says to people, please, don't be on speakerphone when Tom puts you on. It's impolite. It's not so much to me as it is to all our listeners. It just sucks up the show. And my apologies to you, John, for stepping on you. Anyhow, go ahead.
Well, Tom, again, you think about everything you've covered, all the topics through the years. What has really gotten resolved? I mean, we have it's like if you lived 100 years ago and wrote a book of the future, I don't think none of us really will want to be in the period we are now. All the coverage is from polluted air, polluted water, endless wars, rigged elections. I mean, and nothing's really getting done. We can talk about this all we want. The only way, this is a constitutional matter. And I think, the Supreme Court, even though they're controlled by the Republicans right now, it's the only way you're going to ever make change in this society, into our country.
I'll try it again.
We are at a crisis. We need the Constitution, and we need the Supreme Court to step in at this moment in the United States to save our country, to save our government.
Well, the problem is, John, the Supreme Court is now dominated by right-wingers who have, in most cases, been nominated by people funded by fossil fuel billionaires.
Well, can anyone?
Neil Gorsuch is the worst. I mean, Neil Gorsuch's mom, Ann Gorsuch, was the head of the EPA for 3 years under Reagan or 2 years, and had to resign under a cloud of controversy. And she was devastating the environmental rules to the point that William Ruckelshaus, who was the EPA administrator under Nixon, said, this is a terrible thing. The Republican Ruckelshaus said Ann Gorsuch is destroying the environment. She had to leave. Her son is now on the Supreme Court.
Can he be fired? Can
No.
any of the Supreme Court justices? Well,
No, they can be impeached by Congress, but that's it.
Okay, so Congress can fire them.
Yeah, but good luck. I mean, there's never even been, to the best of my knowledge, a bill of impeachment drafted against. Well, maybe there has been, but to the best of my knowledge, it's never been seriously adjudicated, and it's never happened.
Then you need people in there that will make it happen.
What should have happened was that, talk about shutting the government down, is that the Democrats should have shut the government down in the last year of the Obama administration over the Republican obstruction of Merrick Garland's nomination to the Supreme Court. And Merrick Garland, by the way, was Orrin Hatch's nominee. Barack Obama wanted somebody who would definitely get Senate confirmation. He didn't want to deal with, the Republican obstruction. And so he reached out to Orrin Hatch, who he considered to be a reasonable and honorable Republican. Surprise, surprise, he was wrong. But in any case, Orrin Hatch said, this guy Merrick Garland, he's a good middle-of-the-road guy that Republicans and Democrats can both agree on. So Obama nominated him. He's not a progressive. He's not a Sonia Sotomayor or Elena Kagan. He's like Anthony Kennedy. I mean, he's right in the middle. And still, Mitch McConnell says, no, I'm sorry, the fossil fuel billionaires have told me that we've got to have somebody who is going to, and so we get Ann Gorsuch's son. Who's even to the right of Ann Gorsuch.
Tom, there needs to be online petitions about what's going on to try to create a widespread awareness of these issues. I mean, the mainstream media isn't covering really hardly anything anymore. It's Trump every day on mainstream media.
Well, plus they all have interlocking boards of directors, and the mainstream media depends on their advertisers, and that $400 million that the Trumps announced that they're going to be giving to influence elections to get more Republicans elected so that they can get even more tax breaks and more deregulation. That money most of it is going to be spent on television commercials, which is going to benefit the so-called mainstream media and cable media.
And the masses are being brainwashed every day.
Sure. Well, but the media is not going to point it out, because it's their bread and butter. So, I guess there's no way the Koch brothers are going to finance this show, so I can talk about it. I don't know what their thinking is, but this is the way it's going. John, I need to move along, but thank you. You made your point very well. I appreciate it. Jim, and you did it quickly. Jim in Arlington Heights. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Well, Tom, I really need your help. I have 300 contacts on my computer, and I'd like to send something to my conservative friends. Like the GOP is not the same as it was. They started out, and I need a poop sheet. Starting out what they started out with, doing away with the ethics law. That's what they wanted to do. Then they let the coal companies pollute the streams or something. And I don't remember. And nobody knows all this stuff more than you. And if we could get a poop sheet and send it out to our friends, on what the Republicans have done in the last year.
Yeah.
Well, we could change the whole system here. I'm getting apoplectic.
I understand, Jim. I feel the same way myself frequently. And in fact, we're going to have Johan Hari on in the third hour of our program today to talk about dealing with depression and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the second hour, next hour.
Do you know what I mean?
But I do. And there's really kind of two different issues. And one is that, how do you influence Republicans to people who think that they're Republicans? To how do you help them realize that the Republican Party, unless they're part of the 1%, is not acting in their interest? And then the second issue is, here's all the terrible stuff that the Trump administration has done so far. And there is a confluence between those two, a mixing of those two, but they can also be two separate things. In terms of influencing your Republican friends, your conservative friends, I would suggest that you would go to the writings of the anti-Trump Republicans. You've got a lot of Republicans who are coming out now and saying, no, we don't want, we don't want anything to do with this. And look at Joe Scarborough's last op-ed in the Washington Post just a couple days ago. He went off on a rant this morning against Republicans. He's like, the Republicans are doing this, and it was like, whoa. And so,
Tom, we're not going to get the word out. If you made up a poop sheet and we could get a hold of it with one click, we could get it out to 300. And let
me kick the idea around, Jim. I think a comprehensive list. There was one a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I printed it out. I was going to do a rant on it. It was like 130 things that the GOP has done to screw the average person just since Trump was put into the White House. But the problem was the list was so long. It was like there was no way I could even do it in an hour on this program, and people would just go, their eyes would glaze up. There's so much stuff, and so I think it's a matter of picking the highest level things. Scott Pruitt taking apart the Environmental Protection Agency and destroying our environment. You've got.
Well, you could pick those out better than anybody.
Yeah, Ryan Zinke over in Interior. They're destroying our public.
Give you a job, Tom. And
I got it. I got the assignment, Jim. Jim, thanks a lot for the call. We will be working on this. Stick around. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 45 minutes past the hour, 15 minutes before the hour. More of the news of the day, your calls, and my take on all of this in just a few minutes. Should America consider tainted money from the fossil fuel industry to be as bad as money from sexual harassers?
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And my question is, how can you say that there's any doubt about this? And welcome back, Dave in Armstrong Creek, Wisconsin. Hey, Dave, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I was listening to a commentary this morning on MSNBC, and Donald Trump was being interviewed by someone after that Davos conference, and he was asked a question about climate change, and he stated that he thought that the ice caps were expanding and that the world was actually cooling. And
right. This was the interview with Piers Morgan.
Yeah, in all fairness, I believe it was Stephanie Real came right back out and said, no, these statements are totally false, which kind of encouraged me a little bit because you don't even hear the words climate change come out too often. And I think the mainstream media has really should be immediately, talking against these kind of statements that he makes because, and I know Fox News will never pick this stuff up, but, and this was,
Well, what it is, Dave, is it's a classic example of taking a little truth and turning it into a giant lie. The reality is that in Antarctica, there are parts of Antarctica, substantial parts of Antarctica, that are actually experiencing more snow right now than they have historically. And so the ice pack is increasing in Antarctica. But the reason why is because of global warming. You get more snow when you get closer to 32 degrees. And typically Antarctica is much colder than that.
But I think he was referring to the polar ice cap.
Well, Antarctica is the South Pole. So, yeah.
So anyway, it just, I think the mainstream media has a duty to dispute things that are just totally false.
Right, you're right, and they've been good about doing it in some cases, but not in this one. Well said, Dave. Thanks a lot for the call. Jeff, watching Free Speech in Rogers, Arkansas. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Tom?
Good. What's on your mind?
I read an article today in the Washington Post about the evangelicals supporting Donald Trump, and I was found it really disturbing because they was comparing like Donald Trump to Jerry Swaggart, and like they
Jimmy Swaggart,
the moral majority and all that. Well, what are we going to do about this? Are they going to like have these religious right take over, make this a theocracy, and they're going to do away with all the social programs and give the money to churches to distribute to whoever they want to.
Well, this is one of the things that I never saw covered in any of the news stories about the GOP tax scam, and I keep intending to track it down, and my days keep getting away from me. But Trump had said that he was going to put into the GOP tax scam the specific repeal or repudiation of the Johnson Amendment from the 1950s, which said that which said that nonprofits that had a religious purpose could not engage in politics and maintain their nonprofit status, or any nonprofit for that matter, any 501c3. If they engage in political activity, they lose their nonprofit status. And whether that got blown up in the tax bill or not, I'm not sure, but that's the thing that the evangelicals wanted. The big megachurch preachers, they wanted to be able to support the local politicians who would support them, get the local sheriff elected, make sure that their parking lot's well maintained, have the mayor in their pocket, whatever it may be. They want to be power players in the community. And then, of course, at the national level, the Jerry Falwell Juniors of the world, they want to be, national kingmakers. And they argue, they legally can't do it, but they certainly are doing it. So I've got to track that down, Jeff. But I think that's what's, I think it's all about the money, tragically. We'll be back. Welcome back. Glenn in Olivet, Michigan. Hey, Glenn, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I was thinking about this a little bit. Last week I heard about the 30% tariff on solar, and I think we can agree that, decades ago tariffs worked. I'm kind of wondering what might be your take on this 30% tariff. Are we trying to build business in the U.S. and build the solar here, or is this just a gift to the fossil fuel industry?
This is an overt and explicit gift to the fossil fuel industry, Glenn. It's only a 4-year tariff, and it diminishes every year of those 4 years. And so, it basically tapers down to zero over a 4-year period. And what that means is that, if it had been a 20-year tariff or a permanent tariff, then I could see solar companies in the United States saying, cool, we're going to ramp up, we're going to start building factories, we're going to, engage in construction here. But a 4-year tariff, nobody's going to build a factory based on a 4-year tariff, number one. And so, number two, what it does is it basically kneecaps the installation industries that have to buy the solar panels, that were buying cheap ones from China and are now going to they're going to see the price go up, basically. If they continue to buy them from China or Europe or any place else, the price on solar panels is going to go up, and that's going to help the fossil fuel industry. It shouldn't surprise us that Donald Trump, who is president, because $800 million came out of the fossil fuel billionaire Koch network to get Republicans elected all over the country. And, of course, you run these massive get-out-the-vote efforts to get Republican voters out. And who are they going to vote for at the top of the ticket? Whoever's running for president is a Republican, which in this case was Trump. So, whether the Koch brothers explicitly were supporting Trump or not, they were supporting Trump and their network and all their buddies. And so here we are. So, yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Which raises another question. What about these people that have already contracted to put solar and get these panels from a foreign company, and now they've already bid this work, and now all of a sudden they got a 30% tariff on the product they're trying to install?
Yeah.
These installers, my gosh, we could put a lot of installers out of business doing this too.
Well, and I think that's exactly what they want to do. There are about 600,000 people working in the solar industry in the United States. There's only 150,000 coal miners left in the United States. The fastest growing business in the United States last year was the solar industry. And, if you're a fossil fuel billionaire, you look at that going, this isn't good for us. And, and so you say to your toady Donald Trump, or your fellow billionaire Donald Trump, hey, we're being hurt by this. Oh, sure, yeah, we'll kneecap the solar industry for a couple of years while I'm president. No problem. So, I think I absolutely think that's what's going on. Glenn, thanks for the call. Doug in Corona, Michigan. Hey, Doug, what's up?
Yeah, Doug, I got a question for you. I've been listening to you for a little while here, and I'm getting a little confused on who the hell I'm supposed to vote for now. You're trying to tell me the Republicans are just as bad as the daggum Democrats. We've seen over the last 8 years what the destruction of the progressives have done. Now you're telling
Wait a second. Over the last 8 years, you saw President Obama bring the economy back from the disaster of the 8 years of George W. Bush. It's like,
what are you talking about?
You don't remember the stock market was at 8,000 in 2008. That was the Bush crash.
You tripped your George Soros money. You talk about billionaires.
Oh Jesus! I can't. I'm not even gonna. That is not even worth a debate. I'm sorry. That's just pathetic. Mark in Las Vegas. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind?
Hi, yes. Sorry about the earlier call. I'm now off speakerphone. Boy, how am I going to follow up?
And I wasn't ripping on you, Mark. Frankly, I thought somebody was punking me. I'm sorry. So anyhow, if that was you, thank you for calling back. You were saying.
Sure, of course. Hey, and you used the term properly a little bit ago, but it's not the environment like it's something out there. It's our environment.
You're right.
We're entirely dependent on that. Republicans, Democrats, humans, everybody. So when you harm the environment, you're also harming our economy and everything else.
Yes.
People need to understand that,
And our tax dollars are subsidizing, to the tune of billions of dollars a year, are subsidizing the fossil fuel industry in the United States.
Yes.
And then the profits from that fossil fuel industry are being turned around to support politicians and marketing campaigns that deny the damage that the fossil fuel industry is doing to us.
Hey, absolutely. I'm well aware of that. I just want to put out a request that many people out there are quite willing to go into debt when they remodel their homes, put a new bathroom in or something like that.
Sure.
Why is it that people seem much more reluctant to go into debt to go with clean energy? Now,
you mean like getting a $20,000 home loan to put solar panels on your house?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. That's a return of 5 or 10% when you do your own energy.
Right, over a decade. Yeah, over a decade,
yeah. Yeah, but people will say, well, I'd much rather have the bathroom or something, and it doesn't make sense to me. We're talking about 800 years worth of pollution when you burn fossil fuels. They last 800 years.
Yeah.
So, do you care about the future? Do you want a legacy? Republicans are particularly stupid because they talk about the 1% as if they're going to be immune to these consequences.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be immune either.
No, I agree, and in fact, they're not immune. I mean, a lot of Republican homes got wiped out in the hurricanes that we had. A lot of Republican homes. Thank you for the call, by the way. A lot of Republican homes got whacked with the insane freezing weather that's coming about as a result of climate change. Had their pipes freeze and things. A lot of Republicans lost their homes to the hurricanes and the floods and the wildfires and in California and whatnot. Yeah, it's a serious thing. It's hitting and hurting all of us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. In the age of Trump, how do we deal with anxiety? Seriously, we've had on this program both when we were in D.C. a month or so ago, a D.C. psychiatrist and a D.C. psychotherapist, PhD psychoanalyst, who both told us on the air that they were seeing an explosion in their patient populations as a consequence of political anxiety. And the psychiatrist said that most of the people coming in were saying, "Quick, give me some SSRIs. I need some Prozac. I'm freaked out." Johann Hari has written a brilliant new book. It's called Lost Connections: Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions. And this is more focused on specifically depression, but there's a connection to all of these things. And Johann is with us on the line right now. The book is Lost Connections. The website is thelostconnections.com. And you can tweet Johann at Johann Hari, JohannHari 101. Johann, welcome back to the program.
I'm really excited to be on the program, Tom, not least because your writing about ADHD and your son really helped me to frame and think about this book. So I'm totally thrilled to be with you. Thank you.
Whoa, that's high praise. Thank you. Thank you. So why did you write Lost Connections? What inspired you to do this book?
There were these two mysteries that were kind of hanging over me. I was quite frightened to look into them. One was, why was I still depressed? When I was a teenager, I'd gone to my doctor. I'd said, I've got this
sense like pain is leaking out of me. I can't control it. I can't regulate it. I was quite ashamed. And my doctor told me a story. He said, there's a chemical called serotonin in people's brains. You're clearly lacking it. That's why you feel this way. We'll give you these drugs to boost your serotonin levels. You'll be fine. And I felt a real sense of relief to be given that story. And when I started taking the drugs, I felt an even bigger sense of relief. But a couple of months later, that sense of pain started to come back. So I went back to my doctor. He gave me a higher dose. Again, I felt a bit better. Again, the pain came back. That continued until I was taking the maximum possible dose for 13 years. And at the end of it, I still felt I was in a lot of pain. The second question, the much more important one, is I wanted to understand why so many other people were in so much pain. 1 in 5 Americans is taking a psychiatric drug. 1 in 4 middle-aged women in America, in the United States, is taking a chemical antidepressant. And it seemed to me, instinctively, it couldn't be just that something was going wrong inside the chemistry of people's brains. If it was, why is it increasing so much? Like you say, why would it go up after Trump? Trump was not an event in the chemistry of our brains. He was an event in the world. So I went and interviewed the leading scientists all over the world about what causes depression and anxiety and what solves them, from Berlin to Buenos Aires, from Sydney to San Francisco. And I learned so many things. One is that story my doctor told me is not true. Depression is not caused just by a chemical imbalance in your brain. Professor Andrew Scull at Princeton University says it is deeply misleading and unscientific to say that depression is just caused by chemical imbalance. That doesn't mean there's no value to chemical antidepressants. There's some. Happy to talk about that if you want. But the causes of depression and anxiety, I learned, are largely in the way we live. There are some biological factors, but there are 7 key factors in the way we're living today that are causing depression and anxiety, that are making it much worse, and that there are very different kinds of antidepressants waiting for us, which are about solving those problems.
So those different kinds of antidepressants, you're not talking about drugs, you're talking about things to do, right?
Exactly. So I'll give you an example. I noticed that lots of the people I know who are depressed and anxious, the depression and anxiety focuses around their work. So I started to look at evidence. How do people feel about their work? Gallup did the most detailed ever study in the United States of this. They found 13% of us like our work. We look forward to it most of the time. 63% of people are what they called sleepwalking through their work. They don't like it, they don't hate it, and 24% of people hate their work. So you think about that, 87% of people don't like the thing they're doing most of the time. I thought, could there be some connection between that and our depression and anxiety epidemic? I discovered there was an amazing Australian scientist called Michael Marmot who actually discovered the key to this in the 1970s. Professor Marmot found out the key thing that makes people depressed at work is if you go to work and you feel you have no or low control. You feel like you're just like a robot on a line, right? And this is one of the things that connects so many of the things that cause depression and anxiety. Everyone listening to this knows they have natural physical needs, right? We all know we need food, we need water, we need clean air, we need warmth. If I took those things away from you, Tom, you would be in trouble real fast. There's equally strong evidence that we have natural psychological needs. You've got to feel you belong. You've got to feel your life has meaning and purpose. You've got to feel that people see you and value you. You've got to feel you've got a future that makes sense. And our culture is good at lots of things, but there's evidence we've been getting less and less good at meeting these deep psychological needs. So let's think about that in relation to work. If being controlled at work is what makes people depressed, I started to think, well, what's the solution to that, right? What's the antidepressant for that? I learned, and this is really connected to something you've done so much work on your show, I went to Baltimore and met a woman called Meredith Keogh. Meredith used to go to bed every Sunday night, sick with anxiety, thinking about the week ahead. And, she had an office job. It wasn't the worst office job in the world. She wasn't being bullied, but she couldn't bear the thought this was going to be the next 40 years of her life. So one day with her husband, Josh, she did something quite bold. Josh worked in a bike store he had since he was a teenager. And, it's controlled work, it's insecure work, he got very low benefits. One day, Josh and his friends had asked themselves, what does our boss actually do? They like their boss, but they fixed all the bikes. They quit and they opened a bike store that runs on a different principle. It is not a corporation with a boss. It's a democratic cooperative. So they take all the big decisions together. They vote on them. They share out the good tasks and the less good tasks so no one gets stuck with the depressing jobs. And they share the profits. And one of the things that was so fascinating to me there, totally in line with what Professor Marmot had found, is how many of them had been depressed and anxious before. but were no longer depressed in an environment where they were no longer controlled. As Josh put it to me, there's no reason why any business should be run as a top-down corporation. As you've talked about, Tom, that is a really recent invention in human history, and it's making us feel terrible, right? Imagine how many people listening to this who are depressed and anxious at the moment would feel differently if they knew that they were going into work tomorrow to a workplace that they controlled with their colleagues, where if there's a boss, he's elected, he's accountable to them, where they set the priorities, where you regain control over your life. There's an antidepressant.
Forgive my interrupting, Johan,
Sure.
but we have about a minute and a half left. You mentioned shared profits. I'm guessing that their income went up. And I'm wondering, I'm old enough to remember what life was like before Reaganomics and Thatcheronomics in the UK and neoliberal policies in Europe. The lifestyle of working people has gone from really healthy in the 60s and 70s to hanging on by our fingernails for the basic stuff at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, housing and things. Yeah. Might that be a very, very large factor, too? Should we, just bringing back unions and raising wages?
We know it is because when they piloted a universal basic income in Canada in a town called Dauphin in the 70s, so they just said to people, we're giving you a guaranteed income, nothing you can do means we'll take it away. Severe depression and anxiety that was so bad people had to be hospitalized fell by 9%. The financial insecurity created by Reaganism and Thatcherism is a massive driver of the depression and anxiety epidemic. And this tells you something.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're depressed and anxious, you are not crazy. You're not a machine with broken parts. You're a human being with unmet needs, and you need help from the society to get those needs met. You need social change. This is not my position. It's the position of the World Health Organization that says we need to talk less about chemical imbalances and more about power imbalances.
Wow. So you're calling, the book, we're talking with Johan Hari. The book is Lost Connections, and I just want to, cause one, disconnection from meaningful work, disconnection from other people, disconnection from meaningful values, status and respect, childhood trauma, the natural world, and then your prescription is to reconnect in all these regards.
There's a story that really helped me to realize what's going on here. There's a South African psychiatrist called Derek Summerfeld I went to meet who happened to be in Cambodia when chemical antidepressants were first introduced there. And the Cambodian doctors didn't know what they were, so he explained. And they said, we don't need them, we've already got antidepressants. They explained about a farmer whose life they had helped to change. He'd been really depressed, they work in a field.
They bought the guy a cow so he could be self-sufficient. I'm sorry, Johan, I know the story,
Sure.
and I'm hitting the break here. Johan Hari, the book is Lost Connections. It's brilliant, uncovering the real causes of depression. Johan, hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The website is thelostconnections.com. Johan, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom, for everything you do.
Great talking with you. Thanks. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Corky in Hilton, New York. Hey, Corky, what's on your mind today?
Oh, Tom, yeah, I want to know where I can get that 2011 correspondence dinner with Barack Obama.
It lives on YouTube.
Was it? Because I had
I've seen
it on
clips
my
of
tape machine.
Pardon?
I had it on my DVR, but somebody erased it.
Yeah. I'm quite sure you can find it on YouTube.
Because that's the way to drive him crazy.
Yeah.
It does. I'm telling you.
I think that's what drove him
to no end.
Yeah, I think that's what provoked him to run for president. In part, I think the other part of it, part of it was a fun revenge mission because revenge is like really a high value for Donald Trump. And the other part of it was that he thought that running for president, as Michael Wolff points out in his new book, Fire and Fury, that he thought that running for president would raise his profile enough that the Trump companies would start making even greater profits. And, it looked like that was what was happening.
I think he hated Obama so much that it just drove him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Trump is driven by animus, by hatred, and by the need for love and attention. And his need for love is unending, as the Republicans are starting to figure out, because they're now publicly sucking up to him in ways that are just breathtaking.
But he's embarrassing them. He's embarrassing the hell out of them.
Yeah. Some of them.
You hear McCabe just quit?
Yeah. Well, McCabe, we don't know exactly why McCabe is quitting. He's now eligible for early retirement. He's had, I think 20 years in the agency.
Yeah, but they said he had it scheduled for March.
Yeah.
And he moved it up to today.
Oh. I missed that detail.
He's gone.
So so he literally left today. He didn't just announce it today.
No, he left today.
Huh.
That's what they're reporting.
The day before the State of the Union. I wonder what that has to do with anything. I have a feeling that there's a shoe here that's going to drop, and it's going to be real interesting when it does.
I hope it don't have a mushroom cloud when it drops.
Well, that's a concern, and the other big concern that many of us have is, what happens if Trump finds himself in the position of a cornered rat. A cornered rat. I cornered a rat once. We had an old house in Vermont, and down in the basement I found a rat, and I went down there with a laundry basket to try to catch it, and literally backed it into the corner, and that thing just reared up on its hind legs and started making this noise at me like it was going to come and kill me. I mean, scared the bejesus out of me. And so if Trump feels totally cornered, I mean, this is a mammalian response. If he feels totally cornered, how is he going to lash out? Is he going to lash out by firing, firing Mueller, the special prosecutor, like Nixon did? Or is he going to lash out by starting a nuclear war with North Korea and diverting our attention or with Iran? I mean, I
think that's more likely.
I am very concerned about that as a possibility, Corky. I'm very concerned about it. In fact, I think a lot of Americans are very concerned about it, particularly Hawaiians. The Hawaiians have figured this out, right? Because they had their 37 minutes of terror, and it's a tough one. Corky, thank you for the call. We'll be right back. Stick around. Welcome back. Johan Hari is absolutely brilliant. I got to tell you that, and his new book, Lost Connections. It is this generation's version of Bowling Alone. If you remember Bowling Alone when it came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. Another book by another British social scientist who was pointing out that we were living increasingly isolated lives with our televisions and our video games and the internet, but actual physical and nearby social contact, physical contact, starvation, essentially, to us. And the fact that 1 in 4 women in America, 1 in 5 Americans are on some sort of an antidepressant or a psychiatric drug, that's mind-boggling. I have a friend, a woman who had gone through it was a whole process, without going into all the details. Anyhow, she had an actual physical condition and was told by her doctor that a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor drug, an SSRI drug, trying to remember the name of it. It wasn't Prozac, but it was one of the newer ones. Would solve her problem. And she tried it for just about a year, a little less than a year, and a very, very low dose. She was taking about a quarter of the normal dose. And at the end of that time, she decided she wanted a kick, and she was getting electric shocks at her brain. I mean, a really serious withdrawal from this stuff. I am predicting 10 years from now, we're going to see the family of SSRIs as moving up the scale of controlled substances, that they'll be class 4 controlled substances like benzodiazepines are right now. It is just amazing. Just amazing. David in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I was listening to your discussion about the solar tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
I recently came from a meeting on utility issues and sponsored by the Sierra Club, and there's a lot of experts there, and they were talking about how drastically the costs of wind and solar are dropping, so that it's dropping so fast that extra cost is not that relevant. The big impact would be on installers, who is the mass of the workforce, not just the producers of the panels. But wind is down to 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and solar is down to around 2.5 cents. So it's drastically lower
Yeah, and it's in most parts of the country, it's actually below the cost of fossil fuels. Right. And radically below the cost of fossil fuels when you consider the subsidies that we provide to the fossil fuel industry and the damage that the fossil fuel industry is doing to our country, with everything from 10,000 additional cancers a year from breathing automobile fumes and soot and things from exhaust to the destruction of our environment more broadly, the cancer clusters that you see in Cancer Alley downwind from all the refineries in Texas and Louisiana, and then climate change and the damage that that's doing. If you factor those things in, if you add those to the cost of fossil fuels, gasoline, I think, would probably double in price.
Right. Well, another thing, you're just talking about improving your mental state and joining a group that has an action to change, such as the Sierra Club or some other group, gives you information, gives you a direction, and helps you change your feeling of helplessness.
Absolutely, David. I have said so many times to people, getting active is the best therapy.
Right. The Sierra Club has a program right now to get mayors to go 100% clean energy for their cities. Mm-hmm. And this is catching on because cities are starting to realize, well, we can supply our own energy. We don't need to go through the utility necessarily. And utilities are kind of divesting themselves of the energy plants and just creating the interconnection, so that they're supplying the connection but not necessarily owning the plant. So that's a trend right now, and I think we're headed for a logical future, not just cleaner but more logical, reducing inefficiency, letting cities produce their own energy, letting them be responsible instead of depending on somebody else to be responsible for their future.
Well, we're heading in that direction, David, unless the Koch brothers and the Republican Party can derail us. Putting $400 million into an election, into a single election cycle, is pretty breathtaking. And
it's hard for mayors to deny the economic benefit. You can say anything you want, but if they're going to reduce costs for their citizens, then that's a political boon for any mayor.
Yeah, amen. David, thanks for the call. Well said. Phil in Simsbury, Connecticut. Hey, Phil, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Great to talk to you today. And
hey, Phil. Phil, let me pause you. I'm sorry. I just noticed that I've got about 15 or 20 seconds until we're going to hit a break, and I don't want to ask you to jam your comments into that. I'm going to put you back on hold, and I'll pick you up on the other side of the break. But the point that our previous caller made is a really important one. And I want to emphasize that solar and wind are now cheaper than any form of fossil fuel energy, particularly when you consider the impacts of fossil fuels on our planet. And yet the fossil fuel billionaires are putting $400 million into the next election, and the Republican Party still refuses to acknowledge climate change.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
There's something fundamentally sick and twisted about that. We'll be back with your call, starting with Phil right after the break. Welcome back. On the line with us is Aaron Morrison, senior staff writer with The Movement by Mike.com, MIC.com, the website Mike.com/The Movement. And you can tweet Aaron Morrison at Morrison, Morrison, or at The Movement or at MIC. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to come on and have a conversation with you.
Thank you. You wrote a brilliant piece about Glo Merriweather. The title, Glo Merriweather witnessed a shooting death at the Charlotte protest, now faces a felony charge. Tell us the story. Who is Glo Merriweather and what happened?
Well, Glo Merriweather is, I think it would be good to think of them, and I'm going to refer to them as them because Glo Merriweather is gender nonconforming. So that might confuse some people, but with their pronouns are they, them, and their. So Glo Merriweather is someone, Charlotte resident, sitting at home and gets a text message that says, hey, police just shot another black man in our city. And so Glo, already a a known organizer in the community, organized a sort of a mobilization over to the site where a man that was identified as Keith Lamont Scott was shot. He was shot in September 2016. And so, a lot of people who are aware of that shooting know that it led to some civil unrest. There was police termed it rioting. And you had so many people in the streets there. But the reason why we're telling Glow's story is because Glow, more than a year later, is charged or indicted with the offense of inciting a riot and assault on a government official related to the protest. And my story simply asks, okay, why is it that a protest that involved hundreds of people is being narrowed down to just one person as supposedly inciting a riot, that sparked some of the violence that was seen in Charlotte in 2016. So that's the scope of the story in short, but I'm sure we can talk a little bit more deeper about some of the implications.
You mentioned in the kind of preamble to this that Glow was an activist and reached out to all of Glow's friends and associates and said, let's have a protest, and that protest ended up turning violent. Is there not a legal thread that could be followed there, or is that? I mean, what's the specific objection to Glow being charged with that?
Well, essentially, it really speaks to what is it that any one person can do to be responsible for the actions of dozens or hundreds of people. And that's essentially what this charge, when you read the simple language in the indictment documents, this charge seems to say that something that Glow did caused others to respond in the way that they did, meaning there was looting, there was property damage, that officers were assaulted, but Glow is being pinned for essentially inciting that.
And I'm guessing the argument is that it wasn't Glow who provoked the crowd, it was the police killing an unarmed black man.
Well, that, and also the police response to peaceful protesters. So a lot of what Glow and other people who were involved in the protest have said is that, there was no incitement on their side. They feel like the moment that police declared their assembly unlawful, they responded with tear gas and rubber bullets and things that incited anger in the crowd. So the question of who's inciting what is present in this story.
Yeah, I agree. And also this a national trend, I suspect, that we're seeing here. And I think that it started in a big way the day after on January 21st, the day after Trump's inauguration. Really the day of Trump's inauguration, in fact. The kettling of those 200-plus protesters in Washington, D.C., and the kind of mass arrests and whatnot, and charging people who had, typically you charge protesters with obstructing traffic or something like that, and charging them instead with major felonies, long-term jail sentences. It seems to me, and you're a reporter, you're a writer, you're looking at these things probably with a larger lens than I am. But it seems to me that what we're seeing is an increase in the efforts by both federal and state and local governments right across the board in the United States to essentially crack down, to go Richard Nixon Law and Order full tilt, a la coming from the top, coming from Trump, probably channeling Nixon via Roger Stone. And that this is a real dangerous thing for a democratic republic. We don't want to end up being one of those kind of countries where if you protest, you go to jail.
Right, and that is essentially what the main concern is for not only for Glow and the people in Charlotte who have been following this, but people across the country. We know that you can draw, and this is what I lay out in the story, in the Mike story, is that you can draw a line from the response to the Ferguson protest after the shooting death of Michael Brown in 2014 to a sort of parallel movement responding to Black Lives Matter, which then became Blue Lives Matter. And so this Blue Lives Matter movement, I posit in my story, helped to inflame and plant ideas that protesters who are rightly coming out and protesting police brutality and the shooting deaths were now being painted as a direct and possible lethal threat to law enforcement. So in that time, since 2014, you've seen where states are looking to pass what is known as Blue Lives Matter laws, which create hate crime designations for people who allegedly attack police officers. And yes, there have been legitimate concerns when you think about what happened in Dallas and what happened in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2016, surrounding right after the Alton Sterling and Philando Castile shootings in Minnesota and Louisiana. So we know, yes, police officers have a hard job. They do face threats at times, but what the Blue Lives Matter movement has really done is linked any sort of group or protesters speaking out about the particular targeting of African Americans by the police to a very violent threat that is more likely to come from white nationalists or white supremacists versus, any sort of black-led movement. So then you get the term black identity extremists, which is what the FBI put out in the summer of last year, which essentially says these folks are radicalized and believe that any form of police brutality deserves some sort of counter response that is violent towards police officers. So that hopefully that gives you a sense of really where the national scope of this. This has been a long time coming, and Globe Merriweather's case is just an example of what can happen when you criminalize protest. Yeah, well said. We're talking with Aaron Morrison, senior staff writer with the Movement by the Mic, MIC.com. And Aaron, I just an hour ago, I got an email from Donald Trump. When he first started running for office, I sent $5 to his campaign, as I do with pretty much all politicians, so I get on their mailing list and see what they're up to. And they've been begging me for money ever since, and that's, of course, what this email was. I get almost every single day a request for money from the Trump-Pence campaign. But this one is amazing. He says, Fred, because I've registered as Fred Flintstone, he says, Fred, they have the fake news peddlers, so-called experts, illegal immigrants, and Hollywood swamp stars on their side. But we, all caps W-E, have the soldiers, farmers, police officers, veterans, the Americans who've been forgotten. We have the nurses and truck drivers, the husbands and wives, grandparents, kids and neighbors. We have every citizen who believes that America must be put first. We have the beautiful heart and soul of this country. You, now with the end of January deadline coming up, will you show the world that you're still with us? Send us money. But the point is, this divide and conquer strategy that, Trump has just been doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on. What is this doing to our country? Well, I think what's clear is that it's inflaming tensions. I mean, and that's probably putting it lightly. There is a real concern among activists, those in the Black Lives Matter movement and those who don't necessarily identify with that, that there is a quiet effort to ensure that these movements are cut off at the legs as soon as it seems like they're really picking up steam and really having some sort of effect on our national discourse, which we know Black Lives Matter had. Right. Already had. So I think for them it's an existential threat. Excuse me. They need to find a way to counteract this. Otherwise, it threatens the very sort of their bread and butter of what they have institutionalized in this country as far as law enforcement goes. So if we're talking about where are we headed? I think we're headed backwards, and a lot of people would agree with me on this. We're headed backwards to a time where there was less of a concern about protecting the right of everybody to protest and speak out, and that some people are just now not going to be allowed to do that without pretty severe consequences. Right, and on top of that, you get Donald Trump telling a group of police officers, I don't want you putting your hand on those people's heads when you put them in the car anymore. Just kick them around a little. Right. I mean, he didn't say literally kick them around, but that certainly was the message that was conveyed. Aaron Morrison, senior staff writer with The Movement by Mic.com, MIC.com/The Movement. You can tweet Aaron L. Morrison, at Aaron L. Morrison, or at The Movement.
or at Mike, M-I-C. Aaron, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Me too. Great talking with you. We'll be right back.
Okay.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Let's see, Free Speech TV caller John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on Johan Hari's, critique of, what's going on as far as depression. I think that they're so overwhelmed, physicians are so overwhelmed that when people come in, they just, here's your Prozac. They don't really investigate it from a behavioral point of view to separate to see if it's actually, a problem with the person's, neurologic status in their brain, that they have low serotonin or whatever. What they do is they just go ahead and, that's the way it used to be done. It used to be that people would come in, they would send them to a psychologist first, and they would try cognitive therapy, and then usually the psychologist would determine whether it was a cognitive issue that could be treated that way rather than, just with drugs.
Right.
And I think it's just such an epidemic. And I think that, structurally we need to change things in society. The happiest society, I think, in the world is Denmark, and it's a very egalitarian society. So I think that societies where the resources are more spread out, more egalitarian, rather than having a huge gap between the very rich and the very poor, which is how it has evolved in this country. That produces a lot more depression, and I think a lot of social scientists. I've read some of James Gilligan's work, who is a psychiatrist and from Harvard, and he's retired now, but I think his premise is really true that when there is, squeezing of resources, that produces a lot more violent behavior, and in a society spread out, it's a lot different. So that's just what I wanted to say.
You said it very well. The situation in Denmark is that there is virtually no poverty. And there are very few people who are just obscenely rich, and it's because the tax rate is so high. And that stabilizes the society, and it provides the income for a social safety net that lifts everybody up a little bit, and just enough. And we were fairly close to that in the United States right up until the Reagan time. I mean, we really kind of built that society. We were on that trajectory from the 1930s. FDR put us on that course until Ronald Reagan was after he committed treason with cutting a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages for a whole year to take down Jimmy Carter. Reagan came in and just destroyed the whole thing. And now we've got people who hate their jobs I mean, even, I remember going down to my dad's tool and die shop when I, leave elementary school. His tool and die shop was where we first lived in Lansing, was maybe 10 or 12 blocks away from my elementary school when I was in first, second grade. And I'd just walk down there after school and hang out with Dad until he'd take me home at 5 o'clock. And these guys, I mean, it wasn't particularly, quote, meaningful work. They weren't changing the world. They were making precision, tool parts for Fisher Body. But they were paid well enough that they felt like they had control of their lives. I guess about half of them had, summer cottages up on Houghton Lake kind of thing, I mean, the middle-class guys could afford to do that. And that is just wiped out. It's just wiped out. John, excellent point. Thank you for the call. We'll be right back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Phil is up next. Back. Let's check in with Talk Media News. I thought we were going to I've got to pick up the news here. This is brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us, the author of Sideswiped, former Congressman Bob Ney. Congressman, welcome back to the program. What's happening in the world today?
Well, thank you, Tom. Some breaking news. Andrew McCabe has stepped down, and of course he is the deputy FBI director.
Now he was able to step down today instead of in March when he hits his 20 years in the bureau or whatever, because he had accumulated vacation time. Is that the beginning and end of the story, or is he trying to make a statement just before the State of the Union address?
No, I think it's timing. And look, I think there's a backstory here internally beyond Trump, but also, because we all know that he and McCabe
don't get along.
Yes, and he had asked him about the voting. McCabe's wife ran, and there was a Hillary Clinton. We all know the story, affiliated PAC, et cetera. So a lot of animosity. But I think a lot of it also came internally, and I think this is the beginning, Tom, of reshuffling. McCabe is the first step. That's what I believe.
So you think that Trump is going to put one of his apparatchiks, one of his toadies, in as the deputy director of the FBI?
Oh, I would assume so. I mean, look, Sessions is over there, and with DOJ, and of course with the FBI itself. So I assume somebody's going to be replaced there that will be, quote, pro-Trump or
and he already fired
for Trump. I don't know.
Yeah, he already fired what's his name. So now he's got Chris Wray is the director of the FBI. Am I remembering correctly? Okay, so what does Chris Wray do, who is a career FBI agent and apparently a straight shooter? What does he do if Trump says, "Okay, Chris, your number 2 guy is going to be, George Papadopoulos or the Mooch, or the FBI equivalent thereof"?
Well, I think that then Ray would have to make a decision. Does he stay or does he work within the elements that he's, going to have? Now, Ray has his own hands full because, there's some dissension, the whole Comey deal, how Comey handled, frankly, the entire thing. I think, and I defended Hillary Clinton, Comey cleared her and then began to trash her. You don't do that. So, I think there's so much there, and then you throw in McCabe and his wife and Trump, and, look, McCabe knew Trump was breathing down his neck, right? Yeah. And so I think he just said, that's it, that's enough. But I think it is the beginning of indicator of some reshuffling over there.
Yeah, it was more like Trump viewed him as a piñata. So what else is up, Bob?
Well, sure. The State of the Union's coming up. Right now, 8 Democratic members have said that they are, not going to go to the State of the Union. And that's been it so far. And of course, in mass, the Democratic Party is not going to say, boycott the State of the Union. People have to be there. And then I've been to the State of the Unions. You know how they run. Some people stand up and they don't. And the president might get the entire chamber to stand up on some things, and he might not, obviously, on others. I think you're going to, if he stays to the script, you'll see a less combative Donald Trump. If he stays to the script.
Well, he did that in Davos until the Q&A session afterward.
well, that's right. That's different. Then he goes off the script. The script. And then also the big debate on Mueller. Lindsey Graham came out and said that there should be legislation. He can't be fired. McCarthy, the leader in the House, came out and said he shouldn't. As you know by now, Senator Joe Manchin, and that's been touted a lot because he is a Democratic member of the Senate, said that he wasn't ready for it and called it New York speak. That has been, I've been doing radio all morning. That's everywhere, obviously, all over the airwaves. And, just because of the nature of being a Democratic senator, but also let's remember he is from West Virginia.
And he's up for re-election.
He's up for re-election.
And he has a progressive challenger in the primary.
Exactly, and the governor switched parties there to Republicans, so he's got this whole 9 yards there, and he kind of did speak that would sell in West Virginia in the sense that New Yorkers are hot and get angry,
or at least he thinks it will. I mean, Bernie Sanders was perceived by many as kind of a New Yorker. He has that kind of New York way of talking, and he won the West Virginia primary by 21 points, as I recall.
Sure.
So I think policy can triumph. Right. But anyhow, we got a minute left, Bob. What else is going on?
Okay. Immigration plan, that's what everybody's talking about. Let's see what the president says tonight. The president has 4 things in there that the Democratic side can, look at one of them, the Dreamers, and maybe some border security. The other 2 are non-starts. So let's see what the president says about that and what he can do or not do. And I don't know if Schumer will meet with him or not. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Do you think he's going to I predict he's going to set up some straw men in the State of the Union. Like his tweet the other day about how 4 out of 5 terrorists are foreign-born or something like that. And only if you take one particular statistic and slice and dice it in one particular way, and it's just it just proves Lincoln's old thing that figures don't lie, but liars can figure. I'm expecting more of that. I mean, we saw some of that during the Bush administration too. Particularly around the so-called war on terror.
Right. You probably will mention opioids tonight, which will be received by a lot of people. Transportation, he could actually talk himself out of that if he puts too much into the states and not federal funding. I'm curious to see what he's going to do on that tonight.
Yeah. Well, he's going to sell it as a $1 trillion bill, as a $1 trillion deal. But most people won't know from watching the State of the Union that really it's a giant effort to privatize the infrastructure of the United States.
True.
Anyhow, I got a boogie. Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much.
Good talking with you. We'll be back with Rashad Robinson, Executive Director of Color of Change, right after the news at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. At least 9 House Democrats have announced that they're not going to show up for the State of the Union address. Got an email this morning from Credo Action and Josh Nelson. They are petitioning this. They've got 120,000 people who've signed their petition. 9 House Democrats have announced that they will not be in attendance tomorrow. Earl Blumenauer, who represents me here in Portland, in Oregon, Pramila Jayapal, Barbara Lee, John Lewis, Gregory Meeks, Jan Schakowsky, Albio Sires, Maxine Waters, and Frederica Wilson. And Rashad Robinson is on the line with us. Rashad is the Executive Director of Color of Change, colorofchange.org. And you can tweet Rashad at Rashad Robinson or at Color of Change. Rashad, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you. See, you guys are doing what Credo is doing. You're running a petition drive here or an effort to encourage other members of Congress not to show up at the State of the Union address. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. We work really closely with Credo, and when we went out on the campaign some weeks back, we invited our friends at Credo who have joined us and worked with us on a lot of different campaigns. And so we're excited to be both building numbers and momentum, and really this stems from sort of a long-term work since Donald Trump was elected, even before he was elected, at really holding enablers. Those that enable this administration by continuing the status quo, holding them accountable.
Yeah. So how does this work? If somebody goes to the State of the Union, they have the opportunity to do what Joe Wilson did and jump up and yell, "You lie," or something equally undecorous. But I doubt that anybody is going to do that, frankly. But they can also put people in the galleries. They can, arguably make a statement by not standing up. How is not being there a more powerful statement than being there and defying the president?
Well, I think that we need a lot of different types of statements and a lot of folks saying that they're not going to simply go along with the status quo. And we think that this is one of many ways for folks to both resist and oppose this administration. Right after the election, we came out with a set of new strategies where we were going to change what we were doing. At Color of Change, we've been spending years urging the HUD to do different things with, housing and water and lead pipes. We had been urging Department of Justice to do things differently. Well, Donald Trump and his administration showed us exactly who they are. And part of what we're trying to send a message is that these type of events, whether they be the State of the Union, whether they be the inauguration, whether they be these moments where people, quote unquote, come together, you can't come together under false terms. And what we're hoping that members of Congress do is they send a powerful message. And some maybe send a powerful message by bringing dreamers or by bringing folks from Haiti to the galley. And I think that that's going to be important as well. But we do think having folks like John Lewis and others say that they will simply not sit there and stay there during his speech is powerful.
I don't disagree. I agree. And it seems that, or I think that, if they were to be present for something that might be newsworthy. Is there any talk about these people, for example, organizing a little protest outside the Capitol, or doing a town hall, that could, be put up on social media, or, is there?
Well, there will be an event that, a number of members of Congress, including Congresswoman Jayapal and others, will be speaking at the National Press Club at the same time. And that will be streamed on the Root.com and on Univision. And that will be an event with activists. Color of Change as a partner in that event. And so there will be a number of speakers, leaders, having an alternative State of the Union and really talking about not just the state of the union as it currently exists, but all the things that we've got to start building and pushing for to have the type of union we all deserve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Rashad, I wish you the very best in this. If people want to support the effort, I'm assuming go to colorofchange.org?
Absolutely. You can go to colorofchange.org. They can text the word FIGHT to 225568. They can text the word FIGHT to 225568. Follow us on Twitter for updates on the event and ways to engage. And thank you, as always, for having us on and allowing us to share our message.
It is always a pleasure and an honor to have you on, Rashad. Rashad Robinson, the Executive Director of Color of Change, colorofchange.org. You can tweet him at Rashad Robinson or at Color of Change. Rashad, thank you again.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. That's fascinating. We'll see where that goes, and I'm hopeful that something good comes out of it. I think it's very possible. Phil in Simsbury, Connecticut. Hey, Phil, thank you for your patience.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's great to talk to you. Just wanted to start off with a little background for my question, because I know it's not exactly on topic, but I've been a lifelong Republican. I ran for office as a Republican. I served my town as a Republican. I served in the military, and as a veteran, I was a one-issue voter. I really only cared about how the government can best compensate me for my service. Mm-hmm. And then when I was honorably discharged from the military, I studied law, and I found myself slowly transitioning to more of a classically liberal centrist. I'll say if there's one good thing that came from Donald Trump, it's that it woke up people like me, and it has made me much more progressive leaning than I have ever been. And as a result of him, and a thanks to him, that I'm now registered as an unaffiliated voter. So
it's a great step.
One thing that has always got me thinking is mostly stemming from my contemplation of Citizens United. But it's the influence of money on elections. So we know there's a heavy Republican influence by the Koch brothers. And on the flip side, as a Republican, Soros was always painted as the boogeyman. So I was hoping you can shine some light on this for me and kind of contrast the two and their financial influence on both parties.
Sure. I've met George Soros. I've been in the room with him, shall we say, and he is, and I'm on the board of an organization, voqal.org is the website, that helps fund the Democracy Alliance that George Soros has put some money into and through over the years. And I got to tell you, the amount of money coming out of Soros for funding politicians or funding anything is essentially inconsequential. He funds his democracy initiatives around the world, around Europe, and Hungary is particularly upset with him because he's, I believe, Hungarian to begin with. But mostly the phrase George Soros is meta on the alt-right side to rich Jew. That's really what they're saying. And, a rich Jew who is, was not born in the United States. And I think it's just despicable. Soros's influence on democratic politics is, I've never seen any evidence of it, frankly. I mean, he funds some good things about promoting the idea of democracy around the world and here in the United States. But, this is something that Glenn Beck, when he was going off on his anti-Semitic tirades day after day after day, that finally lost him his show on Fox News, in part. he was all over George Soros constantly, and George Soros was getting death threats and all this kind of stuff. And it was just this wild exaggeration. There's no analog to the Koch brothers on the left. I wish there was, Phil. But there's nobody saying, I'm going to put $400 million into the next election. I mean, if George Soros is putting $500,000 into anything, I'm impressed. But, I'm not, tell me about any one thing that you know of that George Soros has done. I'm betting you got nothing, right?
Absolutely. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Phil. It's good talking to you, and keep going. And thank you for being so patient with me today. I hope that we can continue the conversation. But I got to run right now. It's coming up on 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day, your calls and my thoughts right after this break. And welcome back. Don in Hayward, California. Hey, Don, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Hi there, first-time caller.
Thank you.
There was a caller about the electric cars being not green.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a Chevy Volt, and so I started doing some studies, some research on kind of geeky science.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that a car that gets 30 miles a gallon, a regular gas car, the amount of CO2 is coming out to produce the electricity to make my car is half. So, I had to do the therms and the kilowatts and stuff like that.
You're talking about actually manufacturing the car?
No. This is what's coming out of your tailpipe using the gas.
Right.
Okay, on a car that gets 30 miles a gallon, the amount of energy that is produced from that 1 gallon of gas for 30 miles.
Right.
Okay, on an electric car, let's say we have solar panels, so it's kind of moot.
Right.
But gas turbines, to make electricity is half of the CO2s are coming out of that power plant.
Well, that's interesting. So why don't we just make all of our cars like freight locomotives, where freight locomotives have a diesel engine, but the diesel engine does nothing more than turn a generator, which in turn charges batteries and turns the electric motors in the wheels of the freight engine.
Well, yeah, but what people are saying is that an electric car is not green because it took fossil fuels to make it.
Right.
They just think that we should have already flipped over to electricity only before we made these cars. Which,
I see. Yeah.
It's kind of backwards.
Yeah. No, there's got to be a transition period. It's just you want to make it as short as possible once you realize that the technology that we're using is killing us all, or has the potential to kill us all.
Yeah, so what I was doing was I just said, if we didn't have solar panels on our car, is my Volt actually economically better, because I know the power plant is making electricity. So I did the therms to kilowatt transitions and found some really nice stuff, on the internet, do some research on it.
Yeah, so are you saying essentially, Dan, or Don, I'm sorry, that a gallon of gas in your Chevy Volt takes you 60 miles instead of 30? Is that what you're saying?
No. When I charge our car up, let's say we didn't have solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the power plant is making electricity through natural gas.
Right.
Okay, so the natural gas is produced to make that 15 kilowatts of electricity that's in a Volt. To charge it to do the range is 53 miles. Normally we get anywhere from up to 60. Sometimes we might go down to 50 during the winter time.
Sure.
But it's been right around that 55, 58 miles on a charge all the time. And so a 30 gallon gas engine car produces 19 pounds of CO2.
Okay.
Okay, we can go 60 miles roughly on our Volt by the power that
because the centralized gas-fired power plants are so much more efficient than individual car internal combustion engines.
Right, and we're also not talking about the stuff. And we're also not talking about the stuff that's coming out of the gas engine tailpipe.
Right.
Arsenic and all this other stuff.
Right, which is
benzene, things like that.
Right, which is captured with the power plant, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing. before you became vegan, did you ever have lutefisk as a fellow Norwegian?
Yeah. My grandmother used to make it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never had it.
It was awful. I had that as a kid when I was a little kid. Yeah, just boiled to death whitefish. Don, thanks a lot for the call. Great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Richard in Los Angeles. Hey, Richard, thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thank you. Obviously, President Trump was successful in getting Andrew McCabe to resign or step down.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. So that, in all probability, he can replace him with one of his toadies.
Exactly. But what I'm worried about, Tom, we're the same age, and I was born and raised in California, and I'm a Democrat. But this Devin Nunes, my God, what a disgusting traitor! This guy is. What do you think is going to happen with his those secret memos?
Yeah, Devin Nunes
is. Have any success?
He has played this masterfully. He represents California, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. He's from. I'm not sure what the district is, but there's a real effort. I think there's 17 or 19 Republicans who are representing California in a big effort to get rid of all of them. But in any case, this is just brilliant. He writes a memo, or he has his staff write a memo that says whatever kind of propaganda he wants to say. Puts a complete spin on and selective, cherry picks the intelligence information and comes up with this little memo that says, basically, when we give this to Fox News, everybody's head's going to explode. And then he in the background helps start a campaign with a hashtag, release the memo. Then the right-wing media comes in on it and says, yeah, release the memo. And so now it's like, people have forgotten that Devin Nunes actually wrote the memo or was responsible for the creation of it, for the very memo that he's now saying, get it out. I mean, it's brilliant. If I could write an op-ed, which is essentially what this memo is, and instead of publishing it on an alternate or something, I could get millions and millions of people to tweet, release the op-ed, release the memo. I'm amazed.
But Tom,
and I'm amazed that the media has fallen for it, frankly. I mean, I get it. Fox News and right-wing hate radio has been pushing it like there's no tomorrow. But that doesn't mean the mainstream media needs to jump on that bandwagon.
Well, and also I heard that they purposely omitted the FISA application, which would explain almost all of it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he's cherry-picking stuff. But we don't know what's in it, and frankly, I don't want to give it that much more oxygen. But, Richard, excellent question. Thank you. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind besides my hair? Well, I was very intrigued by the email that you had from...
Michael vanished. Lou in Pueblo, Colorado. Hey, Lou, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning. Glad to hear you. I was just wanted to comment a bit on, talking versus action, and to simply talk about it, talking without action is like regulation without enforcement. It feels good, but it doesn't get anything accomplished.
Right.
Last week, after listening to you and poking around and thinking on my own, I sent off emails to the DSCC or DSSC and the DNC saying that, effectively they've abandoned the United States and they're never going to see another dime from me until they become the party that preserves and expands the policies of FDR and LBJ. And that, if all they're going to do is try and grab a hold of the money the Republicans have now, I might as well vote Republican. So then I went a step further and I contacted the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Right.
Which I'm glad to see Pocan's just been moved to the top of that. That's great.
Yeah, he and Raul Grijalva are the co-chairs.
Well, I wrote Grijalva and what I've asked them. And then after I wrote them, I found it actually on their website. What I want to find out is the names and contact information of actual progressive candidates. And I'm going to, the money that I was giving to the DNC Oh, and incidentally, I'm Fred Cadiddlehopper on Trump, so we're related. We're both Freds.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do, I'm going to contribute my money directly to progressive candidates. I don't really give a damn if they're from my district or not, because they're supporting what I believe in. And I don't want to see any of my money going to consultants and corporate TV to support corporate. A corporate Democrat is only good compared to an oligarch Republican.
Yeah.
Compared to anyone else, they're a loser.
Well, and they're losing election. I mean, we've just seen the Democratic Party ever since it embraced neoliberalism in the early '90s just wither in many regards, which is really, really tragic. I think though that the Democratic Party is making a really, really substantial comeback. And Lou, a great place to start. I mean, I think there's almost 100 members, maybe a little over 100 members of the Progressive Congressional Caucus. There's some good progressives in Congress, and that caucus is a great place to start. I mean, if you want to support individual members of Congress who are already in office, you could just look at the membership list of the Progressive.
That's what I said. Yeah, I want all the listeners to know they can go to the CPC website, and everybody is listed there who's a progressive.
That's right.
You would spend more than you're spending now if you sent $1 to each of them, probably.
Yeah. I think it's on Raul Grijalva's website, too, isn't it? Like grijalva.house.gov, and then it's a subset of that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Lou, thanks. Thanks for listening to SiriusXM, too. We'll be back in just a minute.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
More of your calls in the news of the day after this. Welcome back. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael. You want to try it again?
Hey, can you hear me now?
I hear you now. Yes. What's up?
Beautiful. Besides my hair, what's up is I was intrigued by the email that you have read, and kudos to your handle being Fred Flintstone. Big yabba dabba do for you. Nonetheless, when Trump says we got the firefighters, we got the police officers, I can go on, but what got me is the fact of Trump using our military, using the police, trying to use the FBI for his own political and, at times, organized crime agenda.
Yeah, and this was a fundraising letter.
And a fundraising letter, but I heard Michelle Jawando on another talk show discussing when Mr. Trump tried to fire Mueller, and she says that these investigators, like the police officers, like the military, you go into civil service, they take an oath, and the oath is to be loyal to the laws and the Constitution of the United States. Right. It does not in any way, shape, or form mention of being loyal to any one particular individual, and certainly not Trump. So there's serious problems when it comes to the charges of obstruction of justice, which I think is really going to prove here. And it also goes to show how there are those in office using the police to carry out their racist or sexist agenda. You know, we can go back to the days of Rudy Giuliani here in New York City. We can even go back to the days down in, I forgot the name of the town, Virginia, that was so sexist, and where you had the name Lorena Bobbitt come up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I remember. I remember the story. So the bottom line for you, Michael, is you're just observing this kind of tribalism that Trump is promoting in U.S. politics. That's basically what you're saying.
And I'm also saying to all those that took the oath, remember the oath that you took,
right.
And not to be, I don't want to use the word suckered, but don't be duped into doing something that you know doggone well is wrong and against the law just because somebody, quote, gave you the order. Because guess what? When the you-know-what hits the fan, it'll be you that be thrown under the bus and not the person that is giving you that sort of rhetoric. You would really have to prove in court, and not saying that it's not impossible if you look back to the case of, say, Arizona v. Ford, that the person rhetoric is the one that pulled the trigger.
Right. Yeah. Good points all. Michael, thank you for the call. Coach Glenn in State College, Pennsylvania. Hey, Glenn, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I'm getting solar on my roof next month, and was a little confused about how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed kind of confusing. They had people coming through the neighborhood. I had a couple of different people come and talk to me about solar, and I was interested because we have a new home with a new roof. And so here's how it works, because I got it simplified in my head where I can understand it. I'm not buying solar. I'm not even leasing the equipment. What I'm doing is agreeing under contract to buy power from this company that's putting the solar panels on my roof for about 14 cents a kilowatt hour now. I'm paying 27 to the power company. So it's about 30-something percent less. Last month it would have saved me $104.
So basically the sales pitch is, we will sell you electricity for less than you're paying for it right now. We just have to put our electric generating plant on your roof.
Exactly. It's kind of how it works. And they pay me because last month I would have gotten $104 credit. Or more than I would have paid. So I paid X amount of dollars. It would have saved me $104 last month by having the solar up there. And it's fully transferable. They check your roof out and everything. If you need a new roof, they take it off, you put a new roof on, and then they put it back on.
Sure.
After 20 years of the lease, you can have it removed, or you can buy out whatever the value is left, or at any time during the lease, you can buy out based on a third-party, non-connected person's estimate.
Right.
So it's a pretty good deal.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. Glenn, thanks for the information. Good to hear from you. Francesca in Burbank, California. Hey, Francesca, what's up?
Well, I just tuned in, late to the program. At the same time, I turned on Twitter, so I thought I better call your screener and see if this has been covered since you started this morning. And your screener said no, so here it is. Mitch McConnell has scheduled a vote on the 20-week abortion ban for tonight. That vote is happening in the Senate tonight. NARAL has been sending out tweets with a telephone number through which anybody can get connected to their senators.
Can you give us that number, Francesca?
I can give it to you, and where do you need it posted?
Well, just tell us, and feel free to post it on our blog on our homepage at thomhartmann.com, or to tweet it to me, and I'll retweet it.
I'll
go
tweet
ahead.
it to you after I do it.
Okay.
This is the NARAL number to call before tonight for the 20-week abortion ban vote. 1-866-665-4470.
Okay.
866-665-4470. And if you can't find it, go to Twitter, use their search bar, punch in NARAL, and you'll find the tweet.
Right.
And I'll tweet it to you right now, and look where to post it on your blog. I've never done that.
It's just on our homepage. There's a blog there, and it has comments enabled, and you just comment on it. I'm guessing that the odds are this. Well, actually, I don't know. Do you think this might pass, or is this an attempt by the Republicans to just crank up their base?
We'll never know, will we, until it happens.
Yeah, I guess so.
I can't second guess anybody anymore.
Yeah.
I just can't.
It's amazing. Thank you, Francesca. I missed that. You're right. In fact, we talked about it last week, and I knew that the vote was going to be coming up, but I didn't catch that it was happening tonight.
I didn't know till 30 seconds till I called your show, but thank you. Thanks for hearing me.
Thanks, Francesca. Great talking with you. Justin in Ravenna, Ohio. Hey, Justin, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Good afternoon. So I heard about the deputy director of the FBI stepped down.
Right, Neil McCabe.
But I also heard about this
Andrew McCabe.
page memo, and I was a little bit confused about exactly what that is. I was tuning into some of the mainstream media, and they were talking about how it was circulating in the House. And then they started talking about how they should not be focusing on it, and they started talking about Russia. So I just kind of wanted to know exactly,
yeah, so here's what happened.
Is it a big deal, or?
Here's what happened. Devin Nunes, who is I believe he's the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, received a bunch of intelligence information from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Had some of his staff people basically slice and dice that information, which includes some stuff that's classified information. Sliced and diced it into a memo that apparently, from the reports that I'm seeing, suggests that Rod Rosenstein, the number 2 guy at Department of Justice, is a bad guy. Has done something wrong, and that there's some kind of conspiracy within the federal government to bring down Donald Trump. The FBI and the Justice Department are saying, hey, wait a minute, if you release this memo, you are releasing classified information. They haven't, as far as I know, explicitly called out Devin Nunes for, misusing the information, for putting information out in a way that implies something that is not true. But that seems to be the general sentiment. On this program last Wednesday, Congressman Mark Pocan, a Democrat, in fact, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, explicitly, just came right out and said, "I have read the memo." He apparently, you can read. I think he's on the Intelligence Committee also, and he said, this memo is, crap. That's not the word he used, but I don't remember his exact words. And he said, so he's actually calling for the memo to be released because he thinks that it will backfire on Nunes, that it will show what a partisan and how this guy is willing to damage the intelligence infrastructure of the United States for purely partisan purposes and to suck up to Donald Trump. So, we'll see. And so Nunes writes his own memo, and then he starts running around going, Nunes can't release the memo. You need to force him to release the memo. And so Right-Wing Hate Radio took this, and all over the country you've got these poor dupes who listen to these programs going, oh, wow, we got to release the memo. And it became a Twitter hashtag, and it's all over Facebook and stuff like that. And then the Russian bots got in on it, and, on Twitter and Facebook promoting release the memo, and it became a thing. And now the media is talking about it. But this is just a, Devin Nunes scam. It's like when he went over to the White House and got a memo from them and then left one night and the next morning called basically a press conference saying, oh, my God, I got this amazing piece of information. I've got to get it into the White House. And, of course, the White House had given it to him to begin with. And that turned into such a circus that Nunes basically backed away from his own committee for a little while. It's just, this guy does this kind of stuff. It's a stunt. And a stunt that, according to the Department of Justice and Homeland Security and the FBI, a stunt that could damage our intelligence services for no purpose other than trying to make our intelligence services look bad. And when the Republican Party became the Hate the FBI Party, I don't know, but I'm just blown away by this. Because, it's like, I always thought the FBI and the Republican Party were pretty well, stitched together. But apparently it's like the wheels are coming off. So, Justice, that's what I know about it. So, anyhow, thanks a lot for the call. It's coming up on 15 minutes before the hour. What a fascinating day. There's been no collusion whatsoever, says Donald Trump, the Chiron on NBC right now. Remarkable. We'll see where this all goes. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in the news of the day right after this. And welcome back. Arthur in Davie, Florida. Hey, Arthur, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Yes, I would like to shout loudly and proudly about the event that occurred in Florida. It was notated on the front page of the Miami Herald just a few days ago. Tens of thousands of people have gathered signatures to the tune of over 1 million signatures to put an amendment on to the state constitution that will appear this November. It's the restoration of voting rights for felons. And I'd also like to give a lot of credit to the ACLU, an organization that I've belonged to and have respect for many a year. They put over $1.5 million into this. Florida is one of the 4 states that has this law, this onerous law that makes a felon, after they've done their time, to wait 5 to 7 years before they ever get the right to vote again. And I just think it's absurd.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. So do you think this is going to pass?
Oh, yes, because we got over 1 million votes, and we only needed around 800,000. And I think pretty much everybody that I went to get something signed, they said, let me add it, because there are some restrictions. It won't allow a person that's committed murder or a heinous sexual act to have their voting rights restored.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's many people that are in prison really or have been convicted that are really innocent.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, I mean, why does imprisonment or post-imprisonment disqualify a person from voting? I mean, in Europe, people vote in the prisons. You're still a citizen. You should still have some say in your democracy. I mean, it's this instinct that we have in the United States that goes back to the post-slavery days, back to Reconstruction, to look for ways to deprive people of the vote is obscene. It's just obscene, and the rest of the world considers it absurd. Arthur, thank you. Thanks for sharing that with us. Ann in Sugar Grove, North Carolina. Hey, Ann, what's up?
Hi, good afternoon, or morning for you, afternoon here in North Carolina. The man who called in about the correspondence dinner where Trump, was just fuming in the audience.
Yeah, I was there.
I watched it on C-SPAN, and that's where he can go to cspan.org and just plug it in their search engine. You can find anything on C-SPAN. It's where I go. It's right next to for me, I watch that along with Free Speech TV and Link TV. But speaking of the abortion issue, while you guys were on break, I flipped over to C-SPAN, the Senate, and I thought, they're waiting for a Senate to speak? What's this about? And there was the title, abortion. And now, what's her name? Joni Ernst. Mm-hmm. Oh, my gosh. She's
Republican
just
of Iowa.
going on. And yeah, she's just going on and on and on. It's really scary what they're doing. It's really, really scary.
Oh, this is the slicing and dicing of the American electorate.
The guy that, go ahead.
I said this is the slicing and dicing of the American electorate. They're reaching out to the Pentecostal vote and the Catholic vote.
Oh yeah, well, there's a child that lived to be, was born early at 20 weeks, and now he's 5 years old, and she's just got big pictures,
Yeah.
And it's just
no, technology has advanced tremendously. That's true, but
right, exactly. But not everybody waits to 20 weeks. They really just
no. In fact, it's a very, very small percentage. It's a single-digit percentage of abortions, and they almost always have to do with serious malformations of the fetus, or the risk of the mother dying. And I got to run. Thanks. Marvin here with you. Our quote for the day from Angela Davis: "Prisons do not disappear social problems. They disappear human beings." This is apropos of the Republican efforts in Oklahoma to look for women who are pregnant and drinking alcohol and immediately imprison them. Prisons do not disappear social problems. They disappear human beings. Homelessness, unemployment, drug addiction, mental illness, and illiteracy are only a few of the problems that disappear from public view when the human beings contending with them are relegated to cages. Brilliant. Brilliant. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. I wanted to make a comment about the language used by opponents of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of weeks ago, you used the term of art, so I know you know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically, I was reading a white paper by a colonel at the DIA about how we should force China and Russia to use quote-unquote Western terms of art when referring to, like, the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea.
Right.
He said we should reject the term 6-line. That's what China uses, or 9-line, the 9-line. But anyways, I've noticed with opponents of the Black Lives Matter, they rarely ever say, as a matter of fact, I've never had one tell me that they're annoyed by the movement. They always say that they're militant and they're terrorists. They're almost using terms of art that we, the United States, adopted in this war on terror.
Right.
And it really disturbs me because, you can oppose the Black Lives Matter and you can mischaracterize them, but they're still Americans, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
They are not enemy combatants.
Well, and I would say that I would go way beyond that. The Black lives should matter in the United States, and unfortunately, for most of the history of this country, in fact, arguably for all of the history of this country, they have not, or at least they have not relative to white lives. And this isn't an attempt, just like with feminism 40 years ago, You've got white men who a small subset of white men, or probably a substantial subset of white men who viewed feminism. In fact, Donald Trump repeated this in his interview with Piers Morgan that was played yesterday. It was when he was in Davos, where he said, "No, I'm not a feminist because I'm in favor of both men and women." Well, that's what feminism is it's in favor of both men and women. I mean, so bring us all together here. Black Lives Matter is seeking equality. They're not seeking superiority. I mean, it's not the modern incarnation of the black version of the white supremacist movement. It's not that at all. And but that's how the white supremacists want to portray it. It's how the right wing wants to portray it. It's a real tragedy. Dave, thank you for the call, and your point is well taken. Elizabeth in Farmington, Michigan. Hey, Elizabeth, what's up?
Hey, hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I had called in during the solar panel, the cost of running a car discussion. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of a documentary and book that I heard about recently. Wondered if you knew anything about it, called Unacknowledged.
I don't. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, wow. I wish you would check into it and let us know your thoughts on it once you have. It has to do with the technology that was gained from the various landings out west from extraterrestrial flights.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it was re-engineered, and by the 50s we knew of a way to provide energy to the entire world for free, and we would never have gotten into this global warming situation at all, but it was greed and money, the petrodollars, that kept it from being exposed. And according to this documentary, anyway, that's why I'd love to hear your views on it. According to the documentary, each set of presidents, since Eisenhower's time, and that's what he was really warning us about, the military-industrial complex. They were going to keep this technology secret. It's electromagnetic energy.
I'm not sure we need aliens to come up with technology that can power the world. I mean, we've got solar, we've got wind, we've got wave power. There's lots and lots of energy sources out there. But
sure, but what's unacknowledged is the fact that they've kept it silent.
Yeah, no, I got it. You've done a fine job of promoting it. I'll check it out. Elizabeth, thank you for the call. Wyatt in St. Clairsville, Ohio. Hey, Wyatt, what's up?
Not too much, Tom. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, we're talking about the oil and gas industry, and I've worked in the oil and gas industry about the past 15 years, and it's provided I'm union. It's provided a very good living for me. And sometimes I feel like people, demonize the industry more so out of just kind of, ill-informed on
Well, here's the deal, Wyatt. The oil and gas industry is destroying the planet. Wouldn't you feel just as good about making the same pay, or maybe even better pay, installing solar panels or building windmills?
Well, I mean, I understand that, but I think there are a lot of people out there that, they're protesting things that they don't, like, for instance, you be working on a river, we directional drill rivers and put the pipe underneath there, and, somebody be protesting that pipeline going across there, but right behind them there'd be a barge going down the river, I feel like sometimes people just don't really know what they're talking about, and that's what gets, kind of people, switched around on things, and we're working out here in West Virginia. There's a big, Utica Shale, Marcellus Shale, and all that is a big thing out here, And I see these oil and gas industries, they don't just go in there and just, deprive the whole area and rape it for everything that it is. We're in there, we're building new roads into these places. People look back in there that, it's a two-track.
Wyatt, question for you. Have you seen? Wyatt, have you seen Josh Fox's documentary, Gasland?
Gasland, yes, sir, I have.
What do you think?
I think I think it's misrepresented a lot.
Okay.
A little bit. I've worked in the industry for 15 years.
Yeah, I got it.
I don't work.
Wyatt, I got to run. I'm sorry, but you made your point. The poor misunderstood gas and oil industry. Anyhow. We'll see. Check out the vote in the Senate tonight on the 20-week abortion ban. Tomorrow is the State of the Union address. We'll be talking about that. What is our State of the Union tomorrow? And, of course, Wednesday we'll check that out and also check out Joe Kennedy's critique of it. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy requires you. It's not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag. You're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.